Welcome to Transformative Principal, where you learn how to be a leader and not just a manager of a to-do list. I am your host, Jethro Jones. You can find me on Twitter at Jethro Jones. Your to-do list is a hungry monster that is never satisfied. For the last year and a half, I've helped principals get awards, get promoted, and find the time to do the work that really matters. I recently opened a new mastermind slot. Schedule a call with me and let's overcome the stressed and isolated principal position together. Go to the show notes for this episode at transformativeprincipal.org and click Schedule a Call with Jethro. Transformative Principal, episode 208. I'm excited for this conversation with Meredith Allen. We talk about music, which my mom and grandma would say I should be talking more about, but I don't. So I hope you enjoy this conversation with Meredith Allen. Welcome to Transformative Principal. This is episode 208. Man, time is flying, and I am excited to have Meredith Allen on. Meredith, thank you so much for being part of Transformative Principal, and welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. It's my pleasure.
Now, I've got a little bio in the show notes that people can check out at transformativeprincipal.org. But in your own words, can you tell us a little bit about what you're doing and your background?
Yeah, definitely. I was a classroom teacher, am a classroom teacher of music education was my passion. I did that for 9 years. And then I left the K-12 school that I was teaching at to become an instructional technology consultant for Iowa, AEA, one of the largest in the state, very rural. And I was on a team of about there's 5 of us on that team, and we served about 47 different school districts during the 2 years that I was there. And it was during that time I had an opportunity to do some research on some tech tools, and I stumbled on Soundtrap, which is now my current position. I'm an accounts manager and just a general audio in the classroom evangelist for a Sweden startup company now, Soundtrap.
Awesome. So sounds like you've had a lot of fun, diverse experiences. And one of the things that I'm really interested in is really obviously the power of using audio for learning, since I do a podcast and have been for the last 4 years. But in addition to that, really the idea of being able to, music is just such a powerful thing in so many ways. And people live their lives based on the music that they enjoy. And if we can somehow tap into that with our kids, I just feel like we should be able to do amazing things with that. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. When I was in the classroom, it was very interesting because traditionally I had learned music, or I should say I learned music very traditionally. I had a teacher that was in the front of the room. I went to lessons. Heaven forbid I didn't practice that week, or I would get scolded. And you play those notes exactly on the correct way that it's printed. And then I went to college, and I got to definitely kind of expand a little bit and realize, there's a lot more to it than just, having your teacher tell you what to do. And then through my teaching, I learned way more about giving the students some more ownership on their creating. And then that's just kind of blossomed more and more, definitely through my Soundtrap endeavor. But it's interesting. And I say this over and over. I wish I could go back now to the classroom after I've seen all of these rock star teachers doing exactly what I should have been doing in the classroom back in the day, where the kids would, where I didn't have rules, and I should give them an opportunity to kind of take that seed that's in their head and expand on it and support them through that. And it's interesting because that same thing has now applied to how I form professional development with teachers, and giving them the seed and letting them go and figure out where they need to grow and flourish. And funny thing, students are teachers and teachers are students, and it transforms definitely. But with the music piece, we see it everywhere in all of our lives, and we hear it in elevator music and going places, and our lives would be sad, super sad without it. And it does play a very important role that we just kind of forget about because it's just an assumption that music is there, and we kind of take it for granted.
Yeah, I really think we do. I was in one of my teacher's classrooms the other day, and she is a She does operas in the summer and is very musically inclined and is a composer. And she rewrote the words to the Cupid Shuffle, and she's a social studies teacher, to be the Geography Shuffle. And then she taught the kids the dance and the words to go along with it. And, I was in that classroom, and just the energy and excitement that was there. I mean, of course, the kids knew it was cheesy and knew that it was not, not what they probably would have done until midnight the night before, but it was what their teacher did, and they were totally into it. And even the kids who are too cool for school were learning the moves and learning the lyrics. And it was just so amazing to see that level of engagement and excitement about what they were doing. And it's a simple thing, but it really, like you said, it's just a seed. But when given a little bit of water and good soil, then it can become truly amazing. What are some of the things that you've seen teachers do that have just been that little seed and now is something amazing?
Oh, so one that just pops out of my head is John Churchville is a music educator out of Michigan. And I had the opportunity to meet him face to face this summer now a couple of times. But before that, I had seen on Twitter what he had been doing in his classroom. And it's hard to kind of hear the story via Twitter. And so he explained the process to me when we had a conversation. But he has the band was, I think, Go Like the Wind band. And they were a class that met, I think, every day in a school. It was very much, similar to our situations where they had, X amount of minutes for music time. And instead of going through a curriculum or, a set standards and following a recipe, he asked the kids, he would sit down with them and say, okay, let's make a song. And the kids would look at him like, what do you mean? I don't know how to make a song. And he'll say, no, do you have an idea or a rhythm or a melody or even just a lyric that you have in your head? And as soon as he started giving some examples of just how simple of a piece he was trying to get from them, they'd be like, oh yeah, I thought about this like da, 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 da rhythm the other day. And he's like, okay, let's expand on that. And he would sit down at the piano with them and just, for one, he listened, which was huge. But two, he kind of helped guide them through pulling out more of what they had inside them. And then by the end, they had a song. I mean, it took, several weeks or months to come up with their song and add in all the pieces. But what was huge and what I saw on Twitter after the fact was a finished, essentially a CD the class had created, and they sold it for like a fundraiser for the school. And each of the songs on there were complete originals by the kids, and it came from them, and it was their name on there. And so it was super. I mean, he's doing amazing things with just giving the kids that personal ownership on their music creation.
Wow, that's amazing. Hopefully they're still selling that and it's in iTunes or something so that we can put that link in the show notes and support them by doing that. What I love about that is that it's creating something real for kids and not just saying like, okay, I'm going to teach you this thing and then you can perform for your classmates or at a concert later, but like giving them a real audience that is people that have never heard of them before, people who are listening to this. Like, I want to go buy that CD right now just to have it and support kids who are doing cool things.
Right. I know. It's way better than like, we have butter braids around here. We buy food for fundraisers. Let's get something that, grandma and grandpa can pop in and say, that's my grandchild and connect to the world.
Yeah, that is so powerful. I think about times when I've been really motivated to learn things and do things, and when I've seen it in kids. And we did something similar in my previous school. We made a podcast that I've spoken about a couple times on this podcast, but it was something that I knew how to do. So it was easy for me to expand that to my kids. And, I just put it out there. Anybody who wants to make a podcast, come meet with me. And there were about 10 kids or so who were interested. And so we made a daily quote podcast, and that's in the iTunes store. And well, I hope it's still in the iTunes store. Mm-hmm. Wonder if they'll keep paying that bill. Probably not, but it's there in the iTunes store, and the kids, took part. They found a student who could play an intro song for it. That was, we believe, an original that he wrote, and he played it on his guitar for us. And then the kids did all the work around that. And it was just really exciting to see that. And so their self-confidence and their excitement about learning really grew through that experience. And, just the idea of giving kids something real to do is very powerful. So I want to talk a little bit about when you were an educator and the instructional technology coordinator and what those experiences looked like. And if you could go back now, or if you were coaching someone now, since you've learned so much, what advice would you give on how to improve things in the classroom with kids when we've got all these millions of things pushing down on us? How do you really focus and take the time to do things like what John Churchville does?
Yeah. So first, I, if I'm having a conversation with a teacher, that I don't want to say that I think they should be doing things different, because I was that teacher. And so I know that first and foremost, you have to be really careful with the conversation and how you kind of frame it. But hopefully through getting to know them and knowing their kids and their situation, you can draw from them opportunities for the kids to own the learning. And that can look different in any classroom. It could be so much as the student might get to teach the class one day. If that's if you have that one kid in the back that just wants to be the center of attention, and you're struggling with classroom management, and it's because this kid won't be quiet, let him have the stage, because he or she needs that right there. And so that would give that student an opportunity. Maybe it looks like, having an audience for the work instead of assigning a paper, 3-page paper about X, Y, and Z. Let's find somebody that could benefit from the information that these students will be compiling, and then give it to them. It could be, a website for the community in some regard. And I think because I've just seen so much success with that. And I, like I said, I was not that teacher. I was the teacher that did things the way that I thought we were supposed to do them, because that's what we've done for 50 years. And so I've been on that side of things. And yes, my kids loved coming to band because it was band. It was fun. And I tried to make it, personal and fun that way. But I didn't go outside of my classroom much. We did the concert for mom and dad, which is, I guess, a built-in authentic audience. But
Sure.
There was a moment when I was teaching, we did a piece called Junk Funk at the concert, and it was a combined band. 5th grade got to play with big brothers in the high school. It was all the kids together, and they played on garbage cans. And I posted it on YouTube, and I put it on our Facebook page, which I did all of our concerts just to cover my bases as far as parents. And so if they were gone or had to work or whatnot, they could still hear and see their kid perform. And a couple of days later, I got an email from Kevin Mixon, who happened to be the composer of Junk Funk, who I had no idea even, he must have Googled my name to find my email, because he found the video through YouTube. And the email just said, "You guys are doing great things. Keep on going." This is an attaboy email. Really enjoyed your performance. Just tell the kids, and kids, tell your teacher, just keep doing what you're doing. And when I read that email to the kids, because I was super excited, like I was, as a director, that's awesome. Like the composer reached out to us and said, "Good job." And so I read the email to my band kids that Monday morning, and the look on their face was, I will never forget it. And I get goosebumps every time I tell the story, but their faces just changed completely. Their demeanor, their shoulders went back, and their eyes got big, and they realized that they had connected to somebody kind of on a big level, and in New York City, wherever he, in New York where he lived. And it wasn't just mom and dad. And that was one of those turning points that I knew, okay, I've got to break down these walls. I've got to get these connections to these kids past just local little Iowa and just in our little tiny community. I need to connect them to the world, because that's what calls to them. And that's what we need in this society now. We have the technology that connects people. And so they're going to be expected to know and be able to communicate with and work with people all over the world. So we need to start young. And that was one of those moments where I was just like, okay, yep, this is what we should be doing. And so as a coach, I always try to think back to that moment where I need my teachers to have that moment. I need to help them create that energy in the room so they see the buy-in for changing their instruction.
Yeah, that is truly powerful. So instead of, you know, saying this is what you should be doing, you say, how do we get that moment to happen where you feel the difference? How do you create that, especially with somebody who, you know, isn't really interested in making that connection? And I'll let you think about that answer for just a second. So how do you create that opportunity for them? And just share some of my experiences where, you know, I've been able to rub shoulders with amazing people. And, you know, I'm just some guy who's doing this from my basement in Fairbanks, Alaska. And I'm able to connect with amazing people because I'm reaching out and because I'm connected. And there's no reason why our kids can't do that as well. And they will have that opportunity. And if we teach them how to do it appropriately now, then they're going to do things that we could never even imagine right now when they get older and become our age. So how do you help create those opportunities with the teachers that you're working with?
Okay, so a couple of thoughts there. If they're open, you know, you'd mentioned like being connected, and if they're open to the idea of Twitter, that was one of those pieces that was huge for me, because it was like, I think I heard one of my friends say yesterday in an interview, like, Twitter is all about having somebody better than you, some pushing you. I can't remember how he worded it, but he said, I go on Twitter and there's always somebody that's doing it better than me. And so it makes me push myself as an educator. You don't live in that little small world like I'm doing the best there is, because there's not ever a best. You should always be just trying to go for the next step. But you know, with teachers, I'm trying to get them connected on Twitter, and maybe it starts with Facebook, and that's totally okay. There's some great Facebook discussion groups out there. It's whatever they're comfortable with as far as the technology goes, but to get them in some spaces to be inspired, and maybe just, they might not be contributing, but just reading through the threads and starting to get some ideas about, oh, so-and-so said this, maybe I could kind of change what I've been doing for the last 26 years to do this or whatever. The second piece that's really been important to me is, you know, we talk about technology integration and how to shift from just, you know, a lot of people say SAMR, you know, you want to get from the substitution to through the steps and end on the redefinition, but really TrueToCot, which if you're not familiar with, is an amazing tool for starting some conversations about where your technology is and how it can affect your teaching as far as real learning, impactful learning opportunities for the kids. And so it's a question, it's framed with questions. And so you can just start with one or two questions. And, you know, one of them is like, off the top of my head, who is the primary driver of the use of technology in your classroom? And then you would answer teacher, student, or both. Well, if you have one of those teachers that, you know, doesn't use, you know, or uses technology only for PowerPoints at the front of the room, they can't answer that question. You know, they have to circle teacher. And then at that point, you can go back and you can review and say, okay, now talk to me about this answer. And then they'll talk to you and say, yeah, okay, so do you think that, you know, the technology should be more in the hands of the kids a little bit more? I mean, it kind of just, it gets them talking about, oh, well, maybe I could, yep, you're right. I am the primary driver. That's probably not the best situation. So that's been huge. And then obviously with any time that I'm working with teachers, I have to provide support to them. And it might be, you know, I might be coming into a district and doing a professional development where I see them for 45 minutes and I don't see them again face to face ever, because the district has hired me in. But I always leave with the tools that they need to continue on. And obviously that continued open door of being a support to them. But so many times I've sat through professional development situations where I've been taught at, and the trainer or the administrator leaves and the teachers are looking at each other thinking, okay, now what? I don't know the next step. I don't know how to do this. And so I would say those 3 steps are kind of my recipe for getting teachers, successfully moving teachers in the right direction.
So tell me that TrueToCot, what is,
so
spell that for me. I don't.
Yep. It's a crazy name. And I love it for it, because it doesn't mean anything other than what I think it's like an apricot, but sweeter. But TrueToCot is TrueDaCot. And it's like I said, a discussion protocol. It was created by a leader that I had once, Scott McLeod, amazing educator, inspirational person, definitely have on your radar. And then Julie Graber helped create that tool together a few years back. And it's my go-to. It really is.
Now that I know how to spell it, I found it. Go to
Yeah.
the show notes at transformativeprincipal.org. And of course, Scott McLeod has a page on Dangerously Irrelevant about that.
Yeah, great.
So that's a easy place to go to get all of that. So I want to go back a little bit to where you talked about being connected, and you said something that you quoted somebody else said, I go on Twitter and there's always somebody doing it better. And so that pushes me to do it better myself. Now, we live in a world where usually, we go on social media and see that everybody's perfect. And then we start feeling badly that we're not perfect. And I love how you phrase that, because it's so powerful that seeing other people do better can and should inspire you to do better. And that's certainly how it works for me. I don't feel ineffective or like a loser because I'm not doing it as good as someone else. I think, man, if that person can do it, I can certainly do it. I'm good enough. I'm smart enough. And gosh darn it, people like me. So I should be able to do something that cool also. So that mindset, I think, is just so important, of seeing other things and letting them inspire you instead of choosing to be discouraged because you're seeing other people do great things.
Yeah. And with Twitter, usually the practice is that people share what they're doing, they'll showcase what they're doing, but then they'll also provide the resource or resources to do it in your own classroom, which that's a win-win. You see, you have somebody already test the waters, like, yeah, that worked in their classroom, so it's probably going to work in mine. And they've already done the hard work as far as the template or the right steps involved or whatnot. And they oftentimes link all of the resources right there.
Yeah, that is definitely amazing. And I love that aspect of Twitter, especially. I would like to change gears a little bit and talk about the work you're doing with Soundtrap right now and what that looks like. We've gotten a lot of your historical work, but what are you doing at Soundtrap that is exciting and that we need to know about as educators?
Okay, so yeah, I'm going to back up just a little bit for when I found Soundtrap, and I was doing some research for a presentation, and educators often do this. They submit for a presentation to be a speaker, and then they get accepted, and then they do the work as far as the research for what they're going to do the topic on. So that's what had happened to me. I was like, oh, I am apparently speaking on global collaborations with music. I should probably find out what that looks like. And so I went online and I was doing some research, and I found some great, like the Playing for Change and just some others, and Soundtrap was on there. And I was like, what is this? This is interesting. I clicked on there and I watched their video, which I still use in almost all of my presentations, because it was a moment. I started it not knowing like what I was clicking on. And 2 minutes later, I'm bawling because I saw the potential of where our audio recording, music creation can be. I didn't realize that our technology was this far. And this was, like I said, a couple of years ago. So in a nutshell, Soundtrap is what GarageBand does, but we've put it in the cloud and it's collaborative. So I think GarageBand, Google Docs had a baby, and it's Soundtrap. And you and then you can, yeah, I know, right. You can even add in a Skype
That's a good
component.
one.
There's when you collaborate, you can video chat with people right in the platform, text chat right there. And so essentially you can create audio anywhere from any device at any time. And that was amazing to me. Like I said, small town Iowa, my kids, some of them don't ever even leave the county in their life, let alone the state or the country. And so if a teacher has an opportunity to use tools like Soundtrap to connect their kids to the world, I was all in. I was like, okay, this is it. And I remember telling Scott, because Scott was my leader at the time, and I was like, Scott, look, I found this company. They're going to give me some free seats, and I'm going to use it with my maker spaces when we go into schools. And he was like, awesome, you keep doing it. You're doing great. And that's one of his, amazing ways of being a leader, is that he did give me that freedom, and I ran with it. little did I know that it was going to turn into what it has turned into. But I can now say that I work my dream job. I have my music education background. I've got my technology background. I get to be high energy and evangelize something I'm super passionate about, which I enjoy. And so now, yeah, I've gotten the opportunity to be full-time with the company and really immerse myself in this world of audio recording. I didn't realize that there were non-music educators using the tool until several months later. And that's actually our biggest user base is, podcasting, commercials, foreign language lessons, just tons of like teachers using it for that piece that we talked about earlier with giving the kids the reins and creating, and then the ability to share it out so easily. So your audience, like we talked about that CD, it's 3 clicks and you've now published an original piece or original podcast or a story that you had written with cool background music to Twitter, and your audience has now grown to thousands versus just one teacher before. So that's
amazing.
That's where I'm at.
That is very cool. So what are some of the ways that people are using this, and how do we see some of the examples of what they're doing?
Yeah. So we spoke a little bit about John Churchville earlier, and he was using it pretty much just within his classroom. And he was having the kids collaborate within the classroom with each other. So they would create songs, and one kid might be playing the piano, but then another kid could go home and record the drums because he preferred his drum set at home, and they could still be working on it and not just have to do it within the school setting. So a lot of teachers are doing it in that way, where they're using it for group projects so the kids can keep creating at home. I've seen, lots of teachers using the ability to collaborate with the teacher and the student. So let's say a student has an audio recording of their biggest takeaway from the story that they read recently, and they've recorded the quick snippet, very, very much like Flipgrid esque, but then having the opportunity for this teacher to add their own track with, instead of writing down the notes, she or he could just do a quick record of their response. And this would make it's like flipping the classroom. And so the teacher can add comments and collaborate with the student and not have to be in that same space. So it makes it super easy to use in that regard. We have schools connecting with each other. So my favorite that I like to showcase is the Minnesota and Haiti connection that we have. I have a teacher in Minnesota working with a teacher in Haiti, and they've connected their kids using Soundtrap to create original music. And it actually expanded so much that I believe one of the classes is at least the teacher is going to go and visit the other teacher. And so they've made this connection that can never, be taken away. We have Texas collaborating with Maine. We have Florida collaborating with California. We have Canada collaborating with Wales. That one was really cool because that was not music. That was just a podcast. And the students, again, student driven, they got to decide the topic. And then they had conversations like you and I are having right now. But during the school day, we have New Brunswick, Canada kids talking with South Wales about something they're passionate about, this is talk about 21st century skills. They're going to have to do this in their real, when they get older. So yeah, just lots of great things.
Oh. Well, that's awesome. And it's so exciting to see how many different applications there can be when you let the kids drive, and when you basically get out of the way and let them do their own creative things. It's just incredible. So the final question that I have to ask is, what is one thing that principals can do this week to be a transformative leader like you are, Meredith?
So yeah, I've been thinking about that one, and I think
I get that a lot.
Yeah. So for me, I'm in a principal's shoes right now, and it's is it Tuesday today? Wednesday? I don't know.
All day.
Yeah.
Tuesday.
Yeah, and so by Friday, I would hope that I would be having some really great conversations with my teachers, celebrating what they're doing, the good things that they're doing, and encouraging them to keep doing those things and supporting them in those endeavors. And that I don't want to ignore, the people that might not be doing the best in the school. But I believe that if you're celebrating the good, transformative, innovative, forward thinking work in your school, that's going to ignite, and it's going to become contagious. And hopefully, big picture, everybody jumps on board. But that's my one, like, have a conversation, celebrate, share the great things that the teachers are doing in the classroom right now.
Yeah, that's great advice. And definitely we need to do more of that, to be sure. So, Meredith, how do people connect with you, learn more about you and about Soundtrap?
Yeah, so Soundtrap is soundtrap.com/edu for our education platform. That's a great place to start. I have a personal blog, msmeredithallen.org. And then we also have a Soundtrap blog, which I write for sometimes, and others do as well. And that's edu. Gosh, it's the edu blog.
Put you on the spot.
Soundtrap.com. Yeah. And that's great, because that's one of those pieces with the support is like, okay, soundtrap.com. Yeah, that's where you go, but where's the support? And so the blog is kind of where we try to provide the articles and the resources and the tools. Just recently, we're starting 2 projects. One of them being we're trying to connect more classrooms and have kind of a dating page or a site of some kind we're going to build so teachers can find each other that have Soundtrap and are using it. They can more easily reach out to each other. So I'm super pumped about that. And that's linked on the edu blog.soundtrap.com.
Cool. Very cool. Well, Meredith, thank you so much. It's been awesome, and really appreciate you coming on the show today.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
And thank you, everybody, for listening to Transformative Principal. You can find the show notes at transformativeprincipal.org. And we've got links to the things she talked about today, including the Junk Funk soundtrack. If you wouldn't mind, take a moment and share this podcast with your friends. They don't have to be music educators. They can just be interested in connecting kids and getting kids to do real things. Thanks so much for listening to Transformative Principal. Thank you so much for listening to that conversation. And I really want to reiterate what she said about having great conversations with the best teachers. That really does make a difference. And when you surround yourself by those people who are amazing, you get inspired and have hope and are excited for what things can happen. So thank you so much for listening to Transformative Principal, and I hope you have a wonderful day. Transformative Principal is a proud member of the Education Podcast Network. Podcasts for educators by educators. Visit edupodcastnetwork.com for more great podcasts.